Today's session will focus on private clubs. The Allure Private Members Only Club has attracted consumers for years, whilst the hospitality industry has been hit the hardest with this pandemic. This segment of the industry is thriving. Clubs operate with recurring revenue models, creating fixed income from their members. During this recovery, clubs continue to evaluate their operations for governance, amenities, and people as they try to determine how to deliver on the needs of their current and potential members and how to better innovate and engage with their communities. How will this subscription model with exclusionary environment survive with the changing social norms? Will the hotel industry also embrace subscription model and present more competition in this sector? Our panelists today will help us understand the trends in this unique segment of hospitality industry. I'm Abed Butt, and as always, I'm here with our co-host, Sam-Erik. Sam.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted to have this discussion. This is our first episode during the hospitality talks where we are talking about private clubs. And private clubs has a very strong place and in US, but also in Asia and Middle East and also in Europe. I'm particularly interested how the clubs have dealt with the pandemic situation and also what are the expectations from the members and also attraction of new members. So it'll be very, very interesting because US is tend to be the trendsetter in many things, and I'm sure it is also in this regard.
Fabulous. So our all-star panel lineup today includes Jim Lopolito, who's the president of Lopolito Hospitality Consultant. He's been helping businesses recover from tough, difficult situations with their turnaround performance. He has been providing support to restaurants, country clubs, and other food service businesses nationwide, and also has been involved in large productions throughout the country. We also have Ian Fetigan, who is general manager of Boca Royale Golf and Country Club, a consummate professional with deep experience in all areas of hospitality, including private clubs and communities that also include home sales and construction of these clubs and taking the clubs from conceptualization to operations. And last but not least, Billy Panagiotopoulos, who is with Sleepy Hollow Country Club, a long service serving hospitality professional with experiences both in hotels and clubs with a background in sales and food and beverages. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Welcome to Hospitality Talks. Billy, thanks for taking the time and thanks for jumping in. These live streams are a lot of fun, but there are always technological issues. So today it seems like that is the day where we check in several tech issues. But talk a bit about your members' demographics, Billy. Who are these folks? How far wide do they reside, or is it predominantly in your community?
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for having me on here. Essentially, our demographic of membership really is a wide range. We had a lot of membership that actually resided in Manhattan. We do have some local community members here as well. We don't have a large housing community just on our property alone. But members do come mostly. We've seen an uptick in membership, younger families coming from Manhattan, moving up much earlier than expected, and really enjoying the comforts of the club.
Oh, fantastic! Have you seen a big change during the pandemic as to people that might be interested in joining? Did you lose any members? Did you gain members?
Well, actually, we certainly gained more traction. More people want to join. Country clubs, getting out of New York City based on where we are. We're in the suburbs, right? So, getting people to come out of New York City because the city really didn't have the amenities that normally they would have to offer. So most people moved out to the suburbs, really enjoy the club, enjoy the golfing, the rackets, the tennis, all the facilities on the outside that really lend to either a family environment or even just young professionals wanting to get out and even continue to do business out on the golf course as well.
Billy, if you look back to the last downturn, which was, I guess, the global financial crisis, did you see any differences, or is it similar to this pandemic? Obviously, you mentioned that during the pandemic there was an urban flight, a lot of the younger families moving out a lot earlier than they typically would have moved out to the suburbia. But are there any similarities from the last downturn to this one?
Well, I think this one obviously is very unique. No one expected this specifically, right? So I think that it was one of those things where some people were prepared, they were fiscally responsible prior to this situation. But this specific situation challenge that we dealt with was very reliant on on technology, right? Being able to communicate to people in real time. We all know the phone is the extension of the arm, right? So we need to be able to get in contact with people through technology. And some of our older members, normally don't have to embrace technology. In this case, I think globally everyone had to.
So did your members respond to that, or was it a change as you were trying to bring this technology platform to be able to stay connected with your members?
Well, we all know, right? The comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there, right? So essentially, our big thing was to help them, help guide them if they're not used to technology. We want to show them the best way and how efficient it could be. You don't want to lose the touch of hospitality because technology sometimes automated systems. You can get away from the personalization of services, but it's important to embrace that. And obviously, we don't like to use the word change. We like to use the word evolve.
Fair enough. And I like you're saying that comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. A lot of us seem to spend a lot of time in that beautiful place, and every time we ask to shift, it really creates a ruckus. But I'll have to use that line. Can you shed some light on what types of facilities were being used more than the others? Was your golf course, were you putting more rounds out each day? Was your food and beverage facility busier? And did you have to move it outdoors?
Well, we have the beauty of outdoor space. Unfortunately, for the golf course, it didn't rain much last year, but it did allow us to really enhance our activities on the outside. Our goal was really to evolve with the times, embrace the adversity that's in front of us, and say, okay, how could we go ahead and offer value to our members? So we really had to work with a lot of the restrictions, but we were able to use a lot of the outdoors. We improved our facilities. In turn, we actually built out some outdoor space and kitchens and bars outside. So we really used the outdoor space. Our golf rounds were up over 6,000 than normal. So we were almost close to 30,000 rounds of golf through this pandemic. So we really saw a lot of people. I mean, golf is a naturally socially distant sport. So people were out and about playing. And, obviously we had to deal with the dreaded word no in hospitality. You never want to do that. But unfortunately, we had to deal with some of the regulations just to keep everyone safe.
Fair enough. Golf is a naturally socially distant sport because one guy hits it to the right of the fairway, the other guy would hit it to the left of the fairway. but nonetheless, it's a great sport. Sam, I'm not sure if you are available to jump in here. I know you're feverishly working in the background, but if you're ready, over to you.
Well, thank you, Abid and Billy. Very nice to meet you. I've been looking at your website, and it's really a fantastic historical club that you are operating. So I have some little bit of envy about that. It looks fantastic. I'm just wondering, what is your typical day there? I mean, I used to work myself in a private club, and I remember how it was. I was wearing out a lot of shoes, and I was wondering, how about you?
Well, the beauty of hospitality is every day's a different day, right? You keep, here, I mean, the great thing for me is, I really have a handle on food and beverage and all of the operations. So I'm jumping around a bit. But we really have built a great team. Teams win championships, right? So the goal for us, really, a day in the life of me, is really just jumping around in so many different areas, making sure that all areas are kind of running on all cylinders, and services being provided and members are happy. I mean, that's the most important thing. Member experience is key for us.
Yeah. Is it a multi-generational, or because the club is a quite historical club? I mean, are there many generations of members from the same family? Is there some sort of a tradition in your club and with the families who are you're part of your membership?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think most clubs have that legacy, where they've done a lot for the club. They support the club. That's the beauty of clubs. Honestly, I mean, our members are just so connected to our business and really support it in any way they can, because their families have celebrated so many years and years of beautiful times here and beautiful memories. So it just continues to grow, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. Looking at the young membership, or sort of the newer generation of membership, is there anything particularly now that is changing, that you are noticing that the expectations has changed, or is it something that is there a change in the air as far as you can see with the new generation membership that is joining the club or has joined?
Absolutely. I mean, they're foodies, right? They expect some fantastic experiences for food and beverage, similar to some of the restaurants in the city. We developed an actual restaurant pop-up concept, which inspired menus from some of the New York City restaurants to kind of give them that experience. But they're avid golfers, very good golfers. They love the technology aspect of things, the fast and efficient way to communicate. And they're very engaged with the club. They really want to bring their family here. They're interested in activities and camps and all the sporting programs. So they're a very engaged group.
Yeah. My final question is the TV has been replaced by social media, and so a lot of people are watching social media. Do you have some sort of a policies in your club about using social media? Have members some privacy concerns that they are prefer not to be visible on social media, or how does that work in practicality when people like to take a lot of Instagram shots and spread them all over the place?
Yeah, so our social media, we actually developed through COVID our first Instagram page, just for private membership. And the goal there really is, we're not tagging folks on there, or taking pictures of others or crowds or things like that. We're just relax some of the phone policies where you can text and you can't be on the phone and actually talking on the phone. But social media here is, I mean, it's still private, right? We're in the private sector, so it's not out there to the public.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. I was very curious of how it works at your club. So thank you very much for sharing this with us and with the viewers. So back to you, Abid.
Well, again, as Sam has mentioned several times, we would encourage viewers to ask questions. It's always good to have these professionals be put in the hot seat. So it's Billy's turn to be in the hot seat. So please do ask questions. Billy, talk a little bit about the innovations in private club industry. What's new? What's hot?
Well, I mean, there's so many, like I kind of touched on before, how you have some of these younger families coming in. Your food and beverage concepts are huge, right? You want to be able to provide, exceptional food quality, obviously, is always the key, right? And then also, people don't always remember what you say, they remember how you make them feel, right? That's all the old hospitality saying. So the service levels have to really be impacted. But the virtual concepts have been great. The to go, we did a whole fresh market for our membership through this COVID time. I think that we've also actually worked with an app program called Paysetter, which is spectacular. That allows us to stay connected with our members, and they're actually able to reserve, you know, whether it be a golf tee time or even a reservation in a restaurant. So technology really is impacting and the big trend that's following this. But I think that the biggest thing overall is in clubs embracing a lifestyle brand, really offering all of the services for a family, all of the amenities, the health and wellness portion of it all, being able to have a one-stop shop facility for members to come and enjoy themselves, and throughout the entire day. I mean, I think the lifestyle brand concept is really something that is really hot right now.
Billy, talk a little bit about your experiment with the drone. I know we spoke on that. Tell us, how did that work out? It's a very interesting thought. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Yeah, so initially, when the beginning of COVID, we really try to figure out what are the ways we can actually deliver service without being in close contact with a member. So I went ahead and really researched, looking into drone programs. I know there's some clubs out on the West Coast that really have larger facilities on the golf course, and we wanted to do a concept where we can actually have a drone fly out and drop off a beverage or a to-go sandwich or something like that over on the course. Unfortunately, there was a lot of legal ramifications, so we couldn't go ahead and further develop it or actually put it in place. But really, it's the goal is in any situation, especially when things don't go right. It's like finding solutions, right? If we continue to focus on the problems and easily just do nothing, that's the easiest thing to do, right? So really try to get creative and figure out how could we deal with the adversity and continue to move forward. And that was just one of the concepts that I try to roll out here.
Fair enough. Billy, thank you for your comments. Please stay with us. We'll have you back in a moment, but at this particular point, I'd like to bring up Jim Lopolito for our next guest. Jim, thanks for your time and thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Abid and Sam. Pleasure to be here.
Well, sorry for some of the technological challenges, but talk a bit about the members' concern during this pandemic. What are their concerns regarding safety? What are the challenges? How does this industry overcome those challenges?
Well, thank you for the question, Abid. I think it's important to know that I don't think it will come as much of a surprise. Members are going to return to their clubs. I think most managers believe that. I think especially after vaccinations are continuing, I trust managers feel that way. Members want to return. However, clubs are experiencing attrition. However, the rapid attrition that occurred at some clubs last year, I believe, could have been part of normal expectations, but they just got impacted sooner because COVID happened. I mean, maybe a member was thinking of leaving in 2 or 3 years, but because of COVID, they left, last year. So I think, I'm pretty confident clubs are going to rebound. They always have. If there is concern, if there are members that are not returning, it may be necessary to continue the already enacted CDC enacted programs that we've been running. You may have to add indoor air quality improvements. This should be part of your marketing plan. Members want to feel comfortable. to return to their club.
All right. Well, that's fabulous. And the good thing is a lot of these guidance is coming through CDC. We just have to make sure that we can implement it and communicate that to the members so that they feel safe in this entire endeavor. Jim, from your lens, how did the club adjust to different revenue streams? I know the largest revenue for the private clubs continues to be the dues, but what was done differently relative to expense management and alternate revenue streams?
Well, club managers, and across hospitality, I don't want to single out club managers, but managers in clubs are very inventive. They fold and mend and they're pliable, and they come up with ideas that have to be out of the box. That's what our responsibility is. So many of the clubs right away, I mean, restaurants did also they went right into deliveries. They went right into picking up food. The clubhouse is closed. What are you going to do? So you have to continue with some kind of revenue stream. So, I know that some of them built markets. Billy was talking about that, where the member could call up and say, hey, can you get me bread? Can you get me vegetables? And they would order directly from their wholesalers, bring those goods in, repackage them, and get them out to the membership. Many of the clubs continued to operate, and a lot of clubs brought in better profits last year because of lower labor. So they adapted and they survived.
So, Jim, is this a survival? Will the club industry reinvent itself in some ways? What are your thoughts?
Well, hospitality is a survival game. There are things that come up, all the time, to combat, what the environment is. I mean, we're dealing with, staffing changes, people not coming back in the industry. We're dealing with younger people that want 5-day work weeks. They want higher salaries. They want a better lifestyle. Hospitality as a whole has to begin treating employees better. I mean, it just has to happen. But many clubs, when they, with the ability to bring in new revenue sources, we hope that they can continue that. We believe that some of these things are going to continue, and it's just adapting to what's going on. When I walk into a business, I walk in at a different perspective than managers do. I have to look at all the things that are going on, what's not working, and what could be better. So it's a different environment for me than a club manager, but I'm there to assist them in whatever is necessary.
Terrific. And how is sustainability obviously is a big topic in our industry, Jim, and particularly with the pandemic, it is front and center throughout the hospitality industry. How are clubs embracing it? Talk to us about some practices that might have been implemented during this pandemic.
Well, if we're talking about sustainability and not green, the market, one of the things that I think are important is the market has indicated there are some major disruptions going on with farming, with manufacturing, with production, with distribution. And what can clubs do to sustain profits with availability interruptions and rising prices? Because prices are going up. In club amenities, I believe that clubs should consider bulk saving purchases. They should consider advance buying on critical items. Anything can become out of stock in this market. People are not coming back to their jobs as quickly as we like, and this is affecting the manufacturing conditions. In food and beverage, I know this is difficult for a club with all the routine items you need. However, I would consider reducing menu items and running more specials. This will help reduce inventory, This will reduce inventories. It'll offer quick adjustments on item outages with available substitutions. I would consider consolidate preparation needs. All of these things will improve cash on hand. Clubs have a divergence to ideas in reducing costs. However, contrary to that, I often use methods and ideas of reducing expenses that are very successful. There are practical methods that you can use with foresight decisions that will bring in better monthly reports. So, but some of the things that you have to consider are the expenses that are going up in the marketplace. Lumber, plywood have risen 56%. Copper and brass, 30%. Steel, 10%. Precast concrete has increased by 4%. Crude oil is up around 15%. And crude oil is a starting point for paint, drain pipe, manufacturing, roof shingles, flooring. These are all things that clubs have to look at before they consider construction. They should table construction. So as far as maintaining and going forward, there's a lot to consider. There's a lot on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. In some of these things that you brought up, unfortunately, it's though beyond the direct control of the club management folks, but it has to be considered in the overall business model. Jim, let me turn it over to Sam-Erik here for a bit, and I'll be right back with you, Sam.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, Jim, I'm interested now because I've been following what has happened in terms of different procedures that has been put in place during the pandemic, and also the customer expectations have obviously changed because of sanitation and safety and etc. Now, in the club environment, are there certain things that you see is going to remain post-pandemic that has been put in place, or is it going to be back to the way it was before, just generally speaking?
Beginning in April of 2020, I began a program that I developed in going into clubs and restaurants to train in COVID guidance. And I went to a lot of clubs, a lot of restaurants, and trained in this. And one of the things that I outlined was, I don't believe this is going away anytime soon. I think on the other end of this, we're going to see FDA regulations that are going to change, that are going to tell us how we wash our hands. Now, regular FDA regulations, by the way, are only offered as a guidance. And then every state has the opportunity to determine what they want to do with that. But, there are going to, the FDA regulations haven't changed really since 1997, but every 4 years they add some different things to it. So 2021 is the last one was 2017. The next one's 2021. So I expect we're going to see regulation changes on hand washing and some of the guidelines that we've already been doing. I also believe we're going to see building code changes. There's a lot that an organization can do to improve the air quality indoors. And I believe that we're going to have to do that with filtration, with other methods of building pressure, with reducing CO2 or monitoring CO2. All of these things have to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is something that has revolutionized in many ways how we operate. And even though you mentioned that the profits has been gained because of reduction in labor cost, do you see in terms of service levels and so on, do you think there's anything that you will be now different, or is the expectation still in terms of clubs that you have a very highly personalized face-to-face service available to the members at all times?
Well, salaries are going to go up.
Yeah.
They have to go up. There's no other. I mean, we're at an epic point that hospitality industry has been condemned for not having good salaries, and it's come to a pivoting point. If you want to be ahead of the game, I don't care whether you're hotel, restaurant, country club, city club, your salaries have to go up. And actually, Ian and Billy both have two different ways that they've addressed the shortage of labor in the industry. You may have to add in people that come from agencies. You may have to go do a better job of getting people from hospitality schools. You may have to do all sorts of things to improve the services of the club with less availability of staff, or better training methods, better onboarding methods, because you have to stand out as the location that people want to join over every place else. And right now, there's an opportunity. A lot of businesses have closed. Clubs have an opportunity to up their food and beverage game and show that they could do better than everybody else in the neighborhood and pick up lost revenue, pick up revenue that isn't being spent where the place is closed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Jim. Back to you, Abid, for the final questions.
Thank you, Sam. And again, to encourage the viewers to please continue to ask questions. Jim, talk about availability of capital. Capital is obviously king. Our industry is very capital intensive industry. Is there a capital readily available for club development? Is this business model accepted by financiers?
Well, depending upon, it's funny because when I walk into a business, I always recommend that they fund depreciation, that they fund capital projects, and many clubs nowadays do that. But there are many clubs that still don't. They just don't have the revenue coming in to support that. But you have to find a way now to support disaster. We learned this last year, although many clubs did have better profits than ever. But that doesn't neglect the fact that you have to support what you don't know. But I'm on board with supporting depreciation. I'm on board with supporting capital projects. Oftentimes clubs go out and get loans for capital projects and then repay those loans. That's one of the ways that they do it. But you have to have money available to build your club. You have to have money available for disaster that can occur, and it's just part of the budget process. Although I'm a little bit, I'm one of these people who don't really follow a budget process. I look at things a little bit differently, and I train differently. But you have to have a budget.
Fair enough. Hey, Jim, one last question before we bring our last guest in. Talk about technology and technology adoption within clubs. Generally, hospitality has been lagging, but are there any technological innovations that are being considered in this sector, and what is the adoption rate?
Well, I'm not sure what the adoption rate is of technology. It all comes down to money. Pretty much everyone uses point of sale. Many of the clubs have certain point of sale offerings that they've used for years, and some of those point of sale businesses have upped their game to include back of house, front of house, all sorts of things. I mean, there's discounted merchant services out there that you can use to reduce your credit card fees. One of the things when I go into a location and I see them using a point of sale for back of house purchases and inventory, I stay away from that. I shouldn't say I stay away from it. I look at it closely because a smaller business shouldn't spend time using point of sale systems with back of house because it's too labor intensive to keep track of all the changes in the numbers that come in and inventory practices. Just do your inventory and do it by the normal methods. There are certainly purchasing technologies out there that you can have a broadcast of different vendors available, so you can pick and choose. You can come in the morning and all the prices from all the vendors that you do business with, and you can pick and choose where you're going to buy from. So there are certainly advantages to some of the technology that's out there, and yes, you should use it.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. Please stay with us. We'll have you back in a moment. At this particular point, I'd like to bring in our next guest, Ian Fetigan. Ian, I hope our technological issues have been attended to. Unfortunately,
Can you hear me?
Yep, now we hear you.
We hear you.
Can you hear me?
Fabulous. Yep.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you for bearing with us, and thanks for joining us. Talk a little bit about the structural vulnerabilities of this sector, the industry. What are the challenges? How is this sector dealing with the pandemic, Ian?
First of all, again, thank you very much for having me as part of this group. We've covered a lot of information with both Billy and Jim before me. I think one of the biggest challenges we're dealing with in this industry right now is staffing. People have left the hospitality industry, through the pandemic for lots of reasons, and they're not returning. And this is at every level. I mean, you're seeing this at the management level, mid management level, and at the ground level. It really is a challenge. And as Jim mentioned a minute ago, we really have to focus on making our clubs the employer of choice in whatever community you are in. And this, of course, and there's a lot of ways of doing that. Everything from the payroll to the work environment, benefits, etc. And I think clubs more than ever before are positioned to be able to do that effectively. That's one of the big, I think, challenges that we're faced with today, and one of the biggest opportunities we have.
Ian, obviously during the pandemic, everybody had to do things differently, whether that was the state guidance or CDC guidance, or as the case might have been. Talk a bit about the things that you believe will stick around moving forward. Any thoughts relative to that? Any changes that will be permanent moving forward?
The pandemic gave us all an opportunity to really rethink our businesses. We were literally, again, depending on what state you're in, you were shut down to various degrees. Here in Florida, I think we were very fortunate in that even though, back in February of 2020, the restaurants were shut down, the golf courses were kept open. So we absolutely had to change how we did business to be able to remain relevant not only to our members but to our board of directors, as pertaining to the financial statement. So there was a lot of changes. I think, obviously, a practice that's happening differently today is in housekeeping. I think more than ever before, the sanitary practices that were implemented through COVID are going to remain. I can't imagine any business that hasn't seen a immediate and large increase in housekeeping expenses through 2020. These practices are going to remain because they will make your environment safer both for your members and for your staff. So it's a good change. In the As I mentioned, we had the opportunity to rethink the business. So one of the things we did when we shut down the restaurant, fortunately in Florida it was only for a month, we were able to shift to a takeout and a home delivery service, and a grocery service. Now those continue today. And because we're a community club, we will continue to do that. So I think there's a lot of little tweaks along the way in services that are positive. We were able to do a lot of outside dining here in Florida. Believe it or not, we have a 12-month season. Even though it can be pretty warm in the summertime, you can still create outdoor dining spaces and outdoor beverage spaces that work, especially for clubs that are on the water. Makes a huge difference. So I think we've seen a lot of changes in operations, staffing changes. I think one of the things you had brought up the subject of technology. Jim was mentioning point of sale. I think one of the things we're seeing more and more in clubs are the iPads, where the server can order immediately, but more importantly, where members, like in the public sector, will walk in and they'll place their order through their own smartphones, which in theory reduces the amount of labor that you're going to need on the floor. even though, it kind of goes against the whole purpose of the private club where you have that personalized service. Because of the challenges that we're faced with bringing people back into the industry, we're looking for that balance. And that balance is going to be different than what it was prior to where we are today. So those are all little tweaks that are taking place. Um, it's a moving target. I think it was mentioned before how hospitality is typically a moving target. Every single day, we manage by walking around and we look for ways to do it better. And at the end of the day, our focus is on the experience of our members and their guests and our team members.
Ian, I'll turn it over to Sam here in a bit, but can you talk a little bit about the similarities of private clubs and other hospitality businesses? In hotels, yes, you always want repeat clientele coming back, but they might come back every third, fourth week. Your members are there virtually every day, or at least every week. What kind of challenges does it present, and what kind of opportunities does it have?
Well, I think one of the huge challenges is if you don't get it right the first time, you're going to have an opportunity to get it right, again and again and again, and you better be good at that, and you better be surrounded with competent people, who are trained well and who understand that, because there's nothing worse than having a member who is going to be there every single day who's not satisfied with their experience. So the positive is you get the opportunity to correct it. The negative is it's going to happen over and over again, if you don't correct it. So I think a huge difference, in hospitality between private clubs and the public sector is just that. The other part of it is obviously you get to know, in training of staff, I always use the analogy that we try to create the Cheers environment. Of course, with the younger generation today, you have to, put a segment of Cheers up on the TV so that they can understand what you're talking about. But in clubs, your members' names. Not only do you know your names, you know what they like to drink. You know what I'll never forget, as a young manager in this industry, walking up to a club president who just came in off the golf course, and unbeknownst to me, he was a club thrower, and he was someone who took, his game overly seriously, but he was a horrible player. So I walked into the locker room, hey, Mr. So-and-so, how you doing? And he started into his rant about how terrible his golf round was, and I made the mistake of saying, hey, it's just golf, we can always go out tomorrow. And of course he went nuts on me and said that no, it's not golf, it's a part of life, and it's a great example of an opportunity to get better, to improve yourself, and I can't do it. So it was you learn about your members, you get to know them. Now I'm still in contact with this guy today from 30 years ago, and I'll remind him of his of that interaction in the men's locker room. But that's a unique thing in private clubs. You get to know their name, you get to know their likes, their dislikes, and you develop these professional / personal relationships. And I think, and that, there was a question before about generational. Clubs are typically generational. So you're going, if you're in a club and there's plenty of managers in the industry that are in clubs for 30 years, they're dealing with marriages, they're dealing with their babies being born, they're dealing with the marriages of their babies, so it's a very personal experience. And I think the key to success in this industry is understanding that and making the environment, the club environment, that personal, that good.
Very well said. And I think those relationships we all cherish, but more importantly, I'm sure the members greatly appreciate that the club has gotten to know their likes and dislikes, and they are able to deliver to those. Ian, let me turn it over to Sam here in a bit, and I will be right back with you. Sam.
Thank you. Ian, I have a question about, as a general manager, What part of you are in the club as a general manager, but also the community? Maybe your members are also community leaders. What is your involvement outside the gates? Are there some particular clubs, or you engage in certain activities in order to build that, cement that relationship, if you will, with your members?
No, it's a great question. I think it's important to develop those relationships outside of the club as well as inside the club. It's funny that one of the first things I'll do when I, come into a new opportunity is I'll reach out and meet the local, police chief, meet the fire department leaders, go down to the Chamber of Commerce and meet people that are, that very much involved in the community, mayors, whoever it is out there, and then try to show them, if they, don't already, see the value of having this country club within their, greater community. I think that we also, one of the things that you'll find in private clubs is there's a huge philanthropic opportunity for clubs when getting involved with local communities. Our Club Managers Association of America or the National Club Association are both great sources to answer the questions about the philanthropy that happens in our clubs. Huge supporters of communities and of charities around the country. So I think it's important to establish relationships with all the local officials and businesses while maintaining that you know privacy factor that the club represents for its members. As I said before, my club is a community club. There's sort of different types of clubs where you have standalone private clubs in a community versus residential clubs where the club is the social anchor to that community. So either way, it's critical to reach out and get involved.
What role does charity events play for community clubs like yours? Do you organize certain charity events, or are you part of any?
Typically, a club is going to uh, be involved with local charities. We had at Boca Royale for many years. We were involved with Semper Fi, and we have a lot of retired military personnel in our community. So for years, we've supported a golf outing for Semper Fi. And that was incredibly successful. Now, it serves several purposes. Obviously, the primary one is raising funds for the charity, but the community involvement in putting those, golf tournaments together is huge. It brings people together, for 6 months in advance of the event, just planning for it. So it really is a very communal event that members want to be part of, and they see from start to finish they see the positive impact that their actions are having as a club on these charities. So you'll find that the majority of private clubs in the community in the country here in the U.S. Support their local charities in typically very big ways.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ian. These are terrific. Maybe for the final questions, back to you, Abid.
Thank you, Sam. And again, to encourage the viewers, please post your questions. Ian is definitely in the hot seat, so please do post questions. Ian, private club industry's role in recovery. What should be done differently? What can the members do? What can the operators do?
I think that, as we've discussed, the private clubs have been, and again, my use of words here, have done very well through the pandemic of 2020. And I think we're recovering equally well. We were given an opportunity to rethink how we did things. A lot of clubs, are doing things differently today than they did a year ago. This is a good thing. So I think that private clubs, as an aspect of the hospitality industry, have not only survived, they have come out of it stronger than ever before. And there are so many, new things that we've tried through the process that will keep and will keep because they work. So, I'm I'm tickled pink that I'm in private clubs and not in hotels, because I think right now it's incredibly challenging, to one versus the other. As I said, our biggest challenge is just making sure we're the employer of choice in the community, so that because they're having the same staffing issues in restaurants and hotels. We want to create an environment where that, what is it, a buyer's market now, in that the potential employee is checking 4 or 5 different places in their local community, and they have options. They have huge options. First option is, am I going to go back to hospitality? And a lot of people have chosen to leave hospitality. But if they are going to come back to hospitality, are they going to work in a private club? Are they going to work in a local restaurant? Are they going to work at a local golf course? Whatever it is, there's all these options. So we have to be seen as the employer of choice.
Well, Sam, if it's okay, let's bring everybody back in, but we'll continue to discuss this particular issue on shortages, staff shortages, which is really hugely being debated. Jim brought up earlier about possibly the compensation model, amongst other things that needs to be considered. Billy, if I may ask you, what challenges are you up against relative to staff shortages, and what are you doing differently to attract and retain some of the talent?
Well, I think staff shortages obviously is affecting everyone now, right? I think what we try to do to combat it, what we've seen people applying in the market have either been really higher level management positions or someone who's very green. So we developed, obviously a youth program for students, hospitality students. We have a manager in training program. So we're trying to really facilitate almost a farm system for young talent, and exposing them to all facets of the industry. But our biggest thing is actually giving some of our directors or some of our executive leaders assistance. Because if we're bringing in some of these staffing agencies, we need qualified professionals to train them. It also, at the same time, it allows, most people have now, they're valuing their time off, right? I've come up from a different way, what really worked. You think of hospitality, you think of so many hours and so many things that you put in. Everyone is kind of looking now at more of the quality balance. So being able to give some of our executive leaders assistance allows them to have a little bit of that quality of life. So we're trying to combat it in that way. But the shortages just in general, obviously that's one of the ways we were able to combat that.
Any thoughts on compensation models from an industry point of view, but particularly for private clubs? Do you think that will change? And I'm not just talking about the absolute amount. That might have to be done for all the reasons we might know. But would the compensation model change in any way? Jim, any thoughts on that?
Do you mean overall with benefits and everything?
Yeah, just by everything put together. Is there something that the younger generation looks out more so than possibly the boomers did?
Well, beyond higher wages, I think that the industry has to look at a 5-day work week. It's talked about. I believe that the younger generation wants something like that. They may be willing to work more hours in a day, but they want those 2 days off, and who knows, possibly three. Some want that. They want us to understand that they have family values. An emergency is going to come up, and they don't want to hear that they're fired or they're retaliated against. They want a healthier work environment. They want absence of aggression. We have to make that happen. And overall, all of those things are the goal of making your club or your business stand out better than everything else. We have to step up to the plate. Less and less opportunities are out there for health programs that have always been part of the past. That may be something that clubs have to look at and make sure that they have health programs for the staff, and that may be more attractive to the businesses that aren't offering health programs or life insurance programs to the staff. All of those things have to be packaged, and every club has to look at it differently. Every club has to look at what's going on in their area. Across the United States, everything is different in different states and different regulations, and how you can do things. So, it's just like what I said earlier. When I walk in, I have to walk in with a clean slate and determine what's going on, what can be done better, what isn't working, and just come up with another way of doing business. And all of these things would be part of something I would look at.
So, if I was to ask each of you for one thing that this sector needs to do differently moving forward, what would that be? And Ian, let's start from you.
It's Jim hit the nail on the head just now when he talked about every area have these differences that you have to deal with. So there isn't a standard answer to that question. I think it really depends on what state you're in, what county you're in, what town you're in, what are the unique circumstances that you're dealing with in your environment. In my environment, I think it's going to be a combination of the technological, increasing the technological aspect of to allow for less people, but at the same time still need the more people. So you have to create a work environment. I agree. I think, Jim, people don't want to work 7 days a week anymore. This industry is a 24/7 industry, and we need to, break it up. We need to rethink it. We need to do it slightly differently going forward if we're going to be successful. And of course, that's the nature of the beast. I mean, every single day you walk into the place, you're dealing with something different. You've different people, different expectations. You've got it's hard to give you a defined answer to that question because it's going to depend on a lot of variables. However, the right professional, can look at those variables and adjust accordingly. I hate to say it, but been in this business a long time, and I think one of the attributes that comes with maturity in this business is the ability to be able to recognize those deficiencies very quickly and then adjust accordingly.
Fair enough. Thank you for that, Ian. And you're absolutely correct. It's not that one size fits all. You have to deal with each situation independently. From your lens, Billy, if I may ask you next, one thing that you think industry needs to do differently?
Well, it's mindful leadership, really being mindful of people's time, club culture, and your human capital, right? You want to take care of the people that you have. So it's almost like in business, right? You want to keep the customers you have before you find new ones. You want to do the same thing with your staff. So you really want to embrace and take care of the staff that you have, the core staff that have been here with you, and really, show them that you care, right? They're working a lot of hours. Being able to give them a little bit of that extra time off, sometimes it's worth more than a dollar value.
Fair enough. Well said. Jim, anything in addition, one quick thing that you think industry needs to consider doing differently?
Well, as a consultant, I'm going to offer a cost attainment. Now, clubs have a diversion to dealing with costs. They don't want to work with that because they feel that it changes services. But when I address costs, I don't change services. I don't reduce quality. But I believe the business model must adapt to management having clear information about the best profit generators, not revenue generators. Many people focus on revenue generators. And if you know what your profit generators are and your staff know what your profit generators are, it's going to help the business go forward, and it's going to build a better profit margin. So that's what one of the things I focus on.
Thank you. Sam, any thoughts from you? Any questions? Anything that our viewers might be talking about?
Well, from the viewers, we are getting just the overall positive comments from great feedback from the panelists, but not any particular specific questions from them. I have just a quick question from starting with Billy. What is the one thing that you have learned about yourself during the pandemic? And then Ian and Jim.
The biggest thing for me is really to always think forward, right? Be a strategic planner. Always think ahead. Obviously, life in general is filled with peaks and valleys. So being able to be 10 steps ahead and continue that mindset was huge for me.
And how about you, Ian?
It was the scope of the experience was a first for me. And what I mean by that is that, as we were all on a daily basis inundated with contrary information, from various sources, um, you know, uh, uh, political sources, CDC sources, whatever you want to do. If you were to flip flop with in your decisions with every single bit of feedback that we were receiving, I think you would have looked like a village idiot. So I think that what I learned from this experience was that it was critical to commit to a process and then stick to it. And just, again, despite the contrary information coming in, you had to make a decision on your own part and said, okay, I'm going to take this path based on all this information, and then stick to it. Obviously, adjust accordingly as you go, but be very clear to your members, to your staff, to your vendors, to all your peers that this is the path that you're taking. I think that led to in our environment, that led to a feeling of comfort, a feeling of security, a feeling that, hey, somebody knows what they're doing. It may not be me, but somebody knows what they're doing. And I think that in turn, you know, generated a lot of support from the membership in the club through the process. So, get the best information and then stick to your decisions. That's what I've learned.
Thank you. Well said. And how about you, Jim?
Yeah, I have to agree with Ian. I went to my life experiences. I made my determinations based on, all my years in the industry and what direction. If you were to look at a lot of I did a lot of writing. I did a lot of articles starting back in March. And if you go to those articles, I've gone back to them. I was right a lot of times. I have to say, really, I looked at that. I used my gut feeling about how I felt things had to go. I built training programs. You had to step up in order to figure out what direction I had to take my business in another direction somewhat. I offered a lot of free consulting, which I no longer can do that. But you had to adapt. You had to adapt to what's going on. And I used my life experiences in order to make those decisions.
Very good.
So, if I may, before we close, because we're approaching the end of the time, but one last question, and it is somewhat controversial. Social norms are changing faster than we can keep track of. Clubs started out, and to some extent, they continue to be sort of exclusive, keeping all the rest out in a group, like-minded people on the inside of the circle. Do you think this model can survive? There are lots of clubs that continue to practice some controversial practices, but do you think this model will survive, or is it doomed to fail? Ian?
Oh, I absolutely believe that there will always be a significant place in our society for private clubs. I think that the government has done a wonderful job at trying to make sure you were on a more level playing field from the perspective of non-members versus members. But I believe, and it's certainly the pandemic, would support the notion that having establishments where you can belong to and feel safe and feel well taken care of. I think that helped our industry dramatically. So yeah, I believe I believe that private clubs are strong. At the end of the day, it's really it becomes a numbers game in that are there enough like-minded people, as you said, who want to support private clubs, i.e., by being a member, versus those that feel that they are, they're not right and they don't want to be. So I think that there's always going to be, enough people to keep the private club industry healthy and strong and moving forward in a positive way.
Billy, your thoughts. Your club obviously has been around for a long time, and hopefully it'll be around for a very, very, very long time. But talking to members and community at large, do you think this model will survive, or do you think there are changes coming?
I think it's survived. It will definitely survive, and it's thriving. The beauty of having a private club is having, like Ian said, those like-minded individuals that have a place of refuge to go to, that they feel safe, and they feel they're around the same, just demographic of folks. And I think that it would. I don't necessarily think it will change. Obviously, clubs are doing very well right now, and I think a lot of people are really going toward that direction in their communities.
Jim, your thoughts with the changing social norms. What do you think is going to happen to this sector?
Well, tell me that when you go out to a restaurant and the waiter recognizes you, or the manager does, or the bartender does, or you go to your regular hotel when you travel, and the attention to detail that they give you, and they bring your drinks out to your seat out by the pool, and all of the attention that you get, tell me that you don't enjoy that. And that is what a club is all about. So if someone tells me that, they don't want to join a club, we're all part of clubs. We're all doing this in our lives. We enjoy this kind of thing. We enjoy attention to detail and the way that people pay attention to us. So I don't care where you go. You're part of the environment that is a club environment. It's just different. If you join a club, you get that all the time. If you go to if you walk into a restaurant and you're not happy with service, you won't go back. You go to places that you like. You go to places that they give you good service. You go to places that you enjoy the food. That's what a club is about.
Abbott, if I may, I think the other thing to remember is there's a very broad definition of clubs. I mean, there's a lot of different types of clubs that we're talking about. And, at the end of the day, the theory of a club is that you're going to get that experience, huge experience, but at, 1/1000th of the cost, because that cost is spread out, through dues to everybody else in the club. So that experience that Jim talks about, anybody can have if they're willing to, pay the dues, if they're willing to contribute. And again, that dues is a product of how many people are willing to be part of that club. So very strong industry right now and into the future.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Jim Lopolito with Lopolito Hospitality Consulting, Ian Fetigan with the Boca Royale Golf and Country Club, and Billy Panagiotopoulos with the Sleepy Hollow Country Club. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your time and great insights. Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank also the panelists for a great discussion, and all the live viewers. I'd like to great appreciation that you stayed with us for the show, and also the replay viewers who are viewing this later on. Thank you very much for viewing this, and if you liked what you heard and saw, just give us a thumbs up. That's all we are asking. And then, of course, this show is going to be on as a podcast for those who prefer to have the audio version, and it's under Hospitality Talks. So we are looking forward to seeing you soon again with another great episode.
Thank you, Sam.
Look after yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.